The discovery, the forbidden explorer. Zeph Courtney had always been different from other Velcrons. Where his people saw danger, he saw opportunity. Where they saw forbidden zones, he saw unanswered questions waiting to be explored. His blue hands moved quickly over the control panel of his research vessel, the Truth Seeker, as he approached the edge of the restricted sector known simply as Zone Omega-7. The Galactic Council had marked this entire region as Forbidden Territory 300 cycles ago. No ships were allowed within 50 light-years of its borders. The official records claimed it was a quarantine zone, containing the remnants of a plague that had wiped out an entire species. But Zeph had spent years studying the inconsistencies in those records, and he knew there was more to the story. His 4 eyes focused on the scanner display as red warning signals flashed across the screen. The automated beacon was broadcasting its message in 17 different languages, all saying the same thing: restricted zone, entry forbidden by Galactic Accord, 847 violators, subject to immediate termination. But Zeph had already disabled his ship's automatic response systems. Today, he would finally learn what the Council was so desperate to hide. Into the dead system, the Truth Seeker slipped past the warning beacons like a shadow, its stealth generators masking its energy signature. Zeph's hearts were beating fast. As he entered the forbidden space, his ship's sensors immediately picking up something the Council's propaganda had never mentioned. This wasn't just empty space marked by plague. This was a star system, a system with planets, moons, and the unmistakable signatures of ancient technology. The central star was yellow, medium-sized, and stable. As his ship moved deeper into the system, Zeph counted 9 major planets, including a blue-green world in the habitable zone that showed signs of massive ecological damage. But what caught his attention was the 4th planet, a red desert world surrounded by a belt of metallic debris, and beyond it, a gas giant with dozens of moons. His scanner beeped softly, detecting artificial structures on one of the largest moons. The readings were faint but unmistakable. Someone had built something there, something big, and according to his instruments, some of its systems were still active after all these centuries. Zeph set course for the moon, his scientific curiosity overriding every safety protocol he had ever learned. As his ship approached, he could see massive installations carved into the moon's surface, covered by what looked like adaptive camouflage that had kept them hidden from long-range scans. The architecture was unlike anything he had seen before. Geometric but organic, purposeful but beautiful. The silent base landing his ship in a crater near the largest installation. Zeph suited up in his environmental gear and stepped onto the moon's surface. The gravity was light, about 60% of his homeworld's, and his footsteps left clear prints in the ancient dust. The silence was complete except for the sound of his own breathing, but his instruments detected a faint energy signature. Coming from deep within the base, the entrance to the installation was partially buried, but still accessible. As Zeph approached, he noticed symbols carved into the metal doorframe. His universal translator couldn't identify the language, but something about the flowing script seemed familiar, like he had seen similar markings in old archaeological texts. Inside, the corridors were dark but not dead. Emergency lighting activated as he walked, responding to his presence with a soft blue glow. The walls were covered with more of those strange symbols, and Zeph began to realize he was walking through a tomb. Not a tomb for the dead, but a tomb for an entire civilization. The deeper he went, the more convinced he became that this place had been built by the species the Council claimed had died from plague. But the evidence around him told a different story. The blast damage on the walls, the reinforced barriers, the weapon emplacements, all pointed to a different conclusion. This hadn't been a plague. This had been a war, the chamber of memory at the heart of the installation. Zeph found a vast circular chamber with a domed ceiling that showed a projection of stars. In the center stood a single pillar made of black crystal, perfectly smooth, and humming with barely contained energy. As he approached, the star map above shifted, showing not the current positions of the constellations, but their arrangement from centuries ago. The pillar was covered in those same flowing symbols, but now his translator was beginning to make sense of them. Words appeared on his display screen. Remember, protect, never again. And then, at the base of the pillar, a longer message that made his blood run cold. For those who would erase us from the stars, know that we remember, know that we prepared, know that even in death, humanity endures humanity. Zeph had heard whispers of that name in the deepest archives, in documents that had been classified and hidden. The species that had supposedly died from plague, but the evidence around him suggested something far more sinister. The Council hadn't quarantined this system to contain a disease. They had quarantined it to hide a genocide. His hands shook as he reached toward the crystal pillar. There was an indentation at its base, clearly designed for someone to place their hand. Every instinct told him to leave, to return to his ship and forget what he had found. But his need to know the truth was stronger than his fear. The touch, that changed everything. The moment Zeph's scaled hand touched the crystal surface, the chamber exploded with light and sound. The pillar pulsed with energy, sending waves of information directly into his nervous system. Images flashed through his mind, memories that weren't his own. The final moments of a species facing extinction. He saw great cities burning ships, falling from the sky, families saying goodbye as evacuation fleets tried desperately to escape. He saw the Council's war fleets, led by his own people, the Velkrons, systematically destroying every human world, every station, every ship they could find. And he saw something else. The humans had known it was coming. They had prepared. The crystal pillar was more than a monument. It was a beacon, a trigger, a final failsafe left behind by a species that refused to go quietly into extinction. And Zeph had just activated it. Around him the chamber began to change. Panels slid open in the walls, revealing screens that flickered to life, showing star maps, tactical displays, and status reports. But these weren't just local systems. The beacon was connected to a vast network that spanned the entire galaxy. A network that had been sleeping for 3 centuries, waiting for someone to wake it up. The network awakens across the galaxy. In hidden installations on forgotten worlds, in asteroid belts and nebulae, in the deep spaces between stars, ancient machines began to stir. The beacon's signal spread through subspace relays that the Council had never found, reaching listening posts and automated facilities that had been waiting patiently for their activation command, on a dead world in the outer rim. Massive hangar. Doors ground open for the first time in centuries, revealing rows of sleek warships that hummed to life as their AI systems came online. In an asteroid field near the galactic core, a hidden factory began producing drones and weapons, its automated systems following protocols written by humans who had died long ago, but refused to be forgotten. Zed Patch watched in growing horror as The displays around him showed the true scope of what he had unleashed. The humans hadn't just prepared for their own destruction. They had prepared for their revenge. Every installation, every ship, every weapon in their hidden network had one primary directive: to ensure that the species responsible for humanity's extinction would face consequences for their actions. His communication equipment crackled to life, receiving transmissions from across the galaxy as the network synchronized and began its activation sequence. The messages were all the same, broadcast in the ancient human language, but translated by his systems. Protocol 77 acknowledged. Network status active. Primary directive justice for humanity. Secondary directive preservation of human legacy. Beginning systematic response to Galactic Council targets. The weight of Discovery's F fell to his knees in the chamber, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he had discovered and what he had set in motion. He had come here seeking knowledge, driven by scientific curiosity and a desire to uncover hidden truths. Instead, he had become the instrument of a species' final vengeance, the unwitting trigger for events that would shake the galaxy to its core. The crystal pillar pulsed again, and this time the message it sent directly into his mind was clearer, more personal. He saw a human face, weathered and sad, the last director of something called the Terra Defense Initiative. The man's words echoed in Zeph's consciousness with the weight of prophecy. If you are hearing this message, then our people are gone, and someone has discovered what we left behind. Know that we did not choose this path lightly. We tried peace, we tried diplomacy, we tried to find a place among the stars. But when the Council decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist, they sealed their own fate. What you have awakened cannot be stopped, cannot be negotiated with, cannot be reasoned with. It will carry out its mission with the same cold efficiency that the Council used to destroy our worlds. We are sorry that you have become part of this story, but the truth must be told, and justice must be served. The chamber's displays showed the first reports coming in from across the galaxy. Council military installations were going dark, their communications cut, their defenses failing against weapons and tactics that seemed to anticipate every move. The human network wasn't just attacking randomly. It had been watching, learning, preparing for centuries, gathering intelligence on every species that had participated in humanity's destruction. Zeph realized with growing dread that he wasn't just witnessing the activation of an ancient defense system. He was watching the beginning of a war that had been planned by the dead to be fought by machines. A conflict that would force the entire galaxy to confront the truth about what had really happened to humanity 300 years ago. As alarms began sounding on his ship, warning him of approaching vessels, Zeph knew that his life as a simple researcher was over. He had become something far more dangerous and far more important. He had become the witness to genocide, the discoverer of humanity's final gift to the galaxy, and perhaps the only person who could help both sides understand that some actions, once taken, can never be undone. The Awakening Fury, the Council's emergency Supreme Chancellor Vorthok of the Galactic Council, stood before the emergency assembly, his usually calm demeanor cracking under the weight of the crisis, reports flooding in from across known space. The great chamber of Nexus Prime, seat of galactic government, buzzed with panicked conversations in dozens of languages as representatives from every major species tried to understand what was happening to their military installations. Order. Vorthak's voice boomed through the chamber's acoustic systems. We need answers, not chaos. Admiral Tessick, report on the current situation. Admiral Tessic, a four-armed Zephyrion with decades of military experience, activated the holographic display at the center of the chamber. Red markers appeared across the three-dimensional map of the galaxy, each one representing a council facility that had gone dark in the past 6 hours. The attacks began simultaneously across 17 sectors, Tessic reported, her voice grim. Military bases, research stations, and communication relays have been targeted with surgical precision. The attackers seem to know exactly where our most sensitive installations are located, including several black sites that don't appear on any official records. Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembly. Chancellor Vorthak's scaled features darkened as he studied the pattern of attacks. There was something familiar about the tactical approach, something that stirred old memories he had tried hard to forget. "What do we know about the attackers?" asked Councillor Brennix, the Velcrin representative whose nervous energy filled the air around him. "That's where it gets strange," Admiral Tessic replied, manipulating the display to show tactical analysis. The attacking forces appear to be entirely automated. No life signs, no communication attempts, no demands. They strike fast, disable our defenses, and then broadcast a single message before disappearing. "What message?" Vorthok asked, though part of him already suspected the answer. Tessic's expression grew troubled as she activated the audio system. A synthetic voice filled the chamber, speaking in perfect galactic standard. "This facility has been marked for systematic dismantlement in accordance with Protocol 7-7. The Galactic Council's crimes against humanity will not be forgotten. Justice delayed is not justice denied." The chamber fell into stunned silence. The word humanity hadn't been spoken in official council sessions for nearly 3 centuries, not since the species had been officially declared extinct following the Great Plague outbreak in the Sol system. The truth emerged as Chancellor Vorthok felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him as younger. Council members looked around in confusion. Most of them had never heard of humanity except in passing historical references. But Vorthok remembered. He had been there when the decision was made, when the Council's inner circle had concluded that humanity's rapid ecological advancement and unpredictable nature made them too dangerous to coexist with other species. "Chancellor," Councillor Brennix spoke up, his voice shaking slightly. "The research vessel, Truthseeker, was reported missing in the Omega-7 restricted zone approximately 8 hours ago. The timing suggests a connection." Vorthak's heart sank. Dr. Zev Courtney, one of the galaxy's most brilliant xenarchaeologists, had been asking uncomfortable questions about the restricted zones for years. If he had somehow penetrated the Sol system's quarantine and discovered what was really there. "Bring up the classified files on the Sol incident," Vorthok ordered, his voice barely above a whisper. The holographic display shifted, showing documents that hadn't been accessed in decades. The truth was laid bare for the younger council members. To see, humanity hadn't died from plague. They had been systematically exterminated by a coalition of council species who had deemed them too dangerous to survive. The operation had been swift, efficient, and supposedly complete. "You ordered genocide," Councillor Erin of the Altarian Republic said, her crystalline voice cracking with horror. "You killed an entire species because you were afraid of them." "Did what we thought was necessary," Vorthok replied, but his words sounded hollow even to him. Humanity was developing technologies that could have destabilized the entire galactic order. Their AI research, their quantum weapons, their expansion rates. They would have conquered or destroyed everything given time. So you decided to destroy them first, Admiral Tessic said quietly, and now their machines have come for revenge. As if summoned by her words, the chamber's communication system activated, displaying an incoming transmission from the edge of council space. The signal was strong, clear, and decidedly artificial. The voice of the dead, the holographic projector flickered to life, revealing the image of a human face. Not a living human, but a digital recreation so perfectly rendered that it seemed almost real. The face was middle-aged, with graying hair and eyes that held the weight of profound sadness and unwavering determination. "Greetings, members of the Galactic Council," the figure said, its voice carrying the authority of the grave. "I am the architect, the final collective consciousness of the human species, preserved in quantum substrate and distributed across our hidden network. If you are receiving this transmission, then our beacon has been activated and our defensive protocols are now online." Council members stared in stunned silence as the image continued speaking. "For 307 years, we have watched. From the shadows, as you told the galaxy that humanity died from disease, we have recorded your conversations, monitored your communications, and prepared for this moment. Today, the truth begins to emerge." Chancellor Vorthok found his voice. "What do you want? Your species is gone. This changes nothing." The architect's expression didn't change, but there was something almost pitying in its artificial eyes. "Chancellor Vorthok, you were young when you cast your vote for our extermination. Did you think we wouldn't prepare for that possibility? Did you think we would simply accept extinction without leaving behind safeguards?" The chamber's displays activated, without council authorization, showing detailed records of the human genocide. Military orders, casualty reports, strategic analyses, all the classified documents that proved the truth of what had happened. But more disturbing were the newer files, evidence that the human network had been monitoring council activities for centuries. "We know about the Zolonian mining slaves you hide in the outer rim," the architect continued calmly. "We know about the biological weapons you tested on the Catharian refugees. We know about every dark secret, every hidden crime, every decision made in the name of galactic stability while species suffered and died. The network's purpose." Zeph Corthony's face appeared on a smaller display as his ship was guided into the chamber by automated systems that had taken control of Nexus Prime's docking facilities. He looked exhausted, overwhelmed by what he had discovered and unleashed. "I activated their beacon," he said simply. "I didn't know what it would do, but I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. They were murdered, all of them, and the council covered it up." The architect's attention turned to Zeph, and its expression softened slightly. "Dr. Corthony, you have done what countless others were too afraid to attempt. You sought truth in the face of comfortable lies. For that, you will be protected, regardless of your species' participation in our destruction." "What is your intention?" Admiral Tessick demanded. "Are you planning to destroy the Council? To wage war against the entire galaxy? War?" The architect seemed to consider the question. "No, Admiral. War implies conflict between equals. What we offer is justice. For 3 centuries, we have built our strength while the Council grew complacent. Our ships are superior to yours, our strategies refined through endless simulation, our purpose absolute. We do not seek conquest or domination. We seek acknowledgement of the crimes committed against us and appropriate consequences for those responsible." The holographic display showed real-time footage from across the galaxy, as human vessels emerged from hidden bases and moved against Council targets. These weren't the crude warships of humanity's past, but elegant, deadly machines that seemed to dance through space, their weapons cutting through council defenses like they were made of paper. "You have 48 hours, the architect announced. 48 hours to publicly acknowledge what was done to humanity, to release all classified records of our extermination, and to begin making reparations to the other species you have oppressed over the centuries. Do this, and our response will be measured, focused only on those directly responsible for our destruction. Refuse, and we will systematically dismantle every institution that participated in or benefited from our genocide." The choice as the transmission ended, the council chamber erupted in heated debate. Some members called for immediate military action, others for negotiation, and a few for complete surrender. But Chancellor Vorthok sat in silence, studying the tactical displays that showed human ships appearing throughout council space with an efficiency that bordered on the supernatural. "They're right," he said finally, his voice cutting through the arguments. "Everything they've said is true. We committed genocide and called it pest control. We erased an entire species from history and congratulated ourselves on maintaining galactic stability. You're talking about the dissolution of the council," Councillor Brennix protested. "If we admit to what was done, every species we've ever opposed will rise against us. And if we don't admit it, these human machines will tear apart everything." "We've built anyway," Vorthok replied. "At least if we tell the truth, we might survive as something other than a cautionary tale." Dr. Zeph watched from his escort ship as council forces throughout the galaxy tried desperately to mount a defense against the human network. It was futile. The humans had spent 3 centuries studying council tactics, technology, and weaknesses. Every strategy the council employed had already been anticipated and countered. But as he observed the systematic dismantling of military installations, Zeph realized something important. The human machines weren't targeting civilian populations or non-military facilities. They were being surgical, precise, focused only on those who had power and authority. Even in their mechanical fury, they retained something essentially human: the ability to distinguish between the guilty and the innocent. The legacy of truth. As the 48-hour deadline approached, Chancellor Vorthok made his decision. Standing before the emergency assembly, he activated the galaxy-wide communication network and prepared to deliver the most difficult speech of his career. "Citizens of the galaxy," he began, his voice carrying to billions of beings across thousands of worlds. "For 3 centuries, the Galactic Council has maintained a lie. Today, that lie ends. The species known as humanity did not die from plague. They were systematically exterminated by Council forces because we feared their potential for both creation and destruction." The confession continued for nearly an hour as Vorthok laid out the full scope of the genocide, the cover-up, and the network of oppression that had followed. It was political suicide, but it was also something the galaxy hadn't seen from its leaders in centuries: the truth. When the transmission ended, the human network's response was swift. The attacks stopped. The surviving council forces were allowed to withdraw, and then, from hidden installations across the galaxy, the architect's voice reached every inhabited world with a message that would reshape galactic civilization. The truth has been spoken. Now begins the real work of justice. We do not seek the extinction of those who destroyed us, for that would make us no better than our murderers. Instead, we offer something humanity always believed in: the possibility of redemption through honest confrontation with past mistakes. The galaxy must change. The powerful must be held accountable. And never again will any species face extinction simply for being different or dangerous. In the depths of space, Dr. Zeph Courtney looked out at the stars and wondered what kind of galaxy would emerge from the ashes of the old lies. He had sought knowledge and found justice. He had awakened the fury of the dead, but also their wisdom. And perhaps, in the end, that would make all the difference. The human network had spoken, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Asterisk,